Perfect. All right, let's get started.
And
all
I'm
right,
not
so,
biased at all, sorry.
So I can't see, I think you can still see my video and Katerina's video, right? Okay,
yes.
So I can't see myself, so I'll have to hope that I'm presentable. So hello, this is me, Jeff, and Katerina. We're presenting NX for Angular CLI users today. We're not going to talk about NX in general. We're going to talk specifically about NX as it applies to people who are using Angular CLI, and kind of talk about the difference of the experience and why we think everyone who's using Angular CLI should be using NX.
So this is Jeff. He's the co-founder of Narwhal, and he's a farmer of pigs, chickens, and humans. And you can follow him on Twitter at JeffBCross.
And this is my friend Katerina. She's on the NX core team at Narwhal. She's a GDE for Angular, Maps, and Web Tech. She is the co-founder of the Angular Athens Meetup, which is a great meetup I've had the pleasure of attending and speaking at. And she's a speaker and an instructor. You can follow her online at CyberCity, or her website, cyber.city, which has cool trivia about sea monsters. And you can also go visit Athens sometime and convince her to give you a walking tour of the city, which was pretty entertaining, even if most of the facts were incorrect after I looked at Wikipedia later. But nevertheless, it was a good time. And together we make BF Jeff. BF Jeff. We want to start by posing some what if questions to keep in mind as we go through the presentation to kind of get you an idea of the direction we want to go. What if you could do a fresh checkout of your workspace and have the app running in a few seconds?
And what if you could look forward to running E2E tests?
And what if your pull requests could be validated in CI instantly? How would that change how your team writes software? Would you get more done? Would products get to market faster with the feature set that you wanted to go to market with?
Well, NX is the tool that will help bring all those what ifs to life. Here is the site, nx.dev. But why should you use NX in the first place? I guess you're already thinking, I already use the Angular CLI. Why would I need another tool for building or testing? Is there indeed so much added value? Besides, to top that, you're thinking, besides, I don't even work on a monorepo. This is what NX is for, right? Well, we hope we will answer both of your questions today.
And so we've split this presentation into two parts. The first focuses on the modern tools that NX makes available to you. And the second part focuses on all the things that NX does to make your builds really fast. So let's first by looking at the modern tools. So
NX offers support of all the modern tools out there. You get ESLint, Jest, Cypress, Storybook, and Prettier.
So starting with TSLint, so as you may know, TSLint has been deprecated. And the new standard for linting in the community, the Angular community in particular, and overall the TypeScript community, is ESLint. And NX lets you choose between ESLint or TSLint, and will default to ESLint. I think 11, NX 11 defaults to ESLint. I have to check on that, which should be coming out any moment now. And then, so that's ESLint. It's the new thing. You should be using it. NX makes it easy to use it and to move to it from TSLint. And thank you to all these people who've worked on it, particularly Narwhalian alum James Henry, who maintains that package and has done a lot to help us integrate it into NX.
So let's take a look at Cypress. Cypress is an E2E test runner built for modern web. It has a lot of great features like time travel, real-time reloads, automatic waiting, screenshots and videos, and more. By default, when creating a new front-end application, NX will use Cypress to create the E2E test project. Cypress will run in headed mode by default, but you can also run your tests in headless mode. Videos and screenshots will be available for debugging in both cases, of course. In headless mode, your tests will be rerun every time you make a change to your application code by using the --watch flag. You can run your E2E tests against a production build, and of course, you can run your tests on CI as well. You can specify a custom URL to test, and in general, you can customize all of your Cypress configurations however you need by modifying your Cypress JSON file as you would normally do. And of course, you have code completion thanks to TypeScript.
Jest. So Jest is something that we added a couple years ago to NX as an optional way to run tests because we fell in love with the performance of it and the developer ergonomics of writing tests. Were so much more pleasant than what we had been using before, which was Karma and Jasmine. Now Jest is the default test runner for front-end apps built with NX, but you can still use Karma if that's what your organization has standardized on. If you already have your tool set, you can still use that as an option. Jest is fast and fun. The performance, our big philosophy with NX is that developer time is the priority. Like saving developer time and making developers happy leads to all sorts of positive change, like faster product launches, product to markets, faster product go-to-markets. It's early for me. I don't know what time it is for everyone else, but it's morning for me. I just had my first cup of coffee. But it is fast and fun to run the tests and to write the tests. And it's well maintained. It's got a thriving community. It's used very widely in the React ecosystems. I think the Vue ecosystem, I'm not as in touch with that one. But it's a great project. Lots of great projects built with Jest. And so really see that as the future.
Well, to be honest, NX is fast and fun as well. So your slip of the tongue worked, right?
Yes.
So Storybook is one of my favorite tools. Why? Because when I first joined Narwhal, I took over some feature requests for Storybook. So I'm sort of biased.
So it got 10 times better all at once.
Exactly. No. Not taking credit over anybody else. So Storybook, what is it? It's an environment for developing UI components in isolation. It allows you to browse a component library. You can view the different stage of its component and interactively develop and test components. And this is super useful, especially if you're in a large team organization with shared libraries, right? So with the NX Storybook plugin, you can generate Storybook configurations for individual projects, either apps or libraries, and you can do so using either Angular or React. And when generating a Storybook configuration, you also get the option to set up an E2E Cypress app that is configured to run against the project Storybook instance. And with NX, you can build, serve, and watch for changes to your stories. And also, of course, NX helps you migrate from previous versions of Storybook. And I think this was one of the first features I worked on when I joined Narwhal, migrating from 5.2 to 6. So try it out.
Nice. But that has been one of the magical pieces of NX that we get a lot of feedback about. So, and finally, the tool Prettier. So NX sets up Prettier automatically for you. And so Prettier is a very popular code formatter. Has great support for JavaScript and HTML and I think CSS. I know HTML and CSS were later additions. I don't write as much code anymore, so you'll have to forgive me for not remembering everything it formats. But the great thing about it is that your developers don't have to worry about code formatting. There's a lot of, it saves you from arguments if you just say, you know what, there's a good reasonable formatting default. Let's accept it. Let's just use it. Let's talk about more interesting problems with our code base rather than, where semicolons should go or trailing commas make sense. So you get it by default. You don't have to do anything. You can install the Prettier plugin in your IDE as well to have it automatically format files for you. But NX also has a feature that lets you format only changed files. So you can run a command to format your files, but it's not going to change files that have nothing to do with your pull request. It'll format only the ones that have changed so that you don't have a pull request with a bunch of changed files that actually shouldn't have been changed at all. And that was something we did pretty early on that made Prettier more powerful. So now we're going to switch over to Katerina for a demo.
So, yes. Nor you can add my screen. Okay. So in this demo now, we are going to run the npx create nx workspace command to see what comes up, because this is the basis of NX. You get the NX CLI and you generate, first you have to generate an NX workspace. I have a video recording of the demo, because when I have to do a live demo, I stress out a lot. So I'm just going to share the video with you. And it's going to be weird because you will hear me speaking, but my mouth will not be moving. But I hope you will.
Can you try to move your mouth along with it?
I can try, yes. It will
even better, I could try to.
Okay. So, and Nor, you can tell us if you, or Jeff, you can tell us if you can hear the sound all right.
npx
I hear
create nx workspace. Let's see what's happening here.
Okay, I think I have
To workspace.
Okay.
Then,
So the first thing that it asks you to do is to provide the workspace name. And let's see, then it says, what do you want to create in the new workspace? Let's see.
it will ask us what to create in the new workspace. We can, of course, create a totally empty workspace with a layout that works best for building applications. We can create a workspace with a single React application. We can create a workspace with a single Angular application, a workspace with a single Next.js application, or a single Nest application, or a single application built using web components. But we can also build a workspace with a full stack application using React and Express, or Angular and Nest. We can also use the OSS option to create an empty workspace with a layout that works best for open source projects, or nothing else, because that was the end of the list. So let's create a workspace with a single Angular application. It will ask us for the application name. I will say demo app. Default style sheet format, I will go with SAS. Default linter, I will go with ESLint. And should you use NX Cloud? It's free, doesn't require registration, and it gives you faster builds, run details, and GitHub integration? Of course, yes. So it will create a sandbox with an X. Let's
try moving this forward. Come on. I hear you laughing, Jeff.
And it's done. Let's go in our workspace. If we open our workspace in VS Code, let's see a little bit the folder structure. We have the apps folder, which now has our demo app, which is a usual Angular application as you know it, with its app module and its app component. And here is also the demo app E2E, which is the Cypress test that we mentioned before. And it contains an E2E application written in Cypress. But there is also a libs folder, which is now empty, but we will fill in eventually. And there are some tools as well. The schematics folder, where we can add our custom schematics. And as we usually expect, there is the angular.json file and some presets for Jest, the package.json, the NX.json.
And that is the result of the npx create nx workspace command. You can run it as I did in the demo, which you just run npx create nx workspace, and then interactive wizard shows up and asks you to fill in things. Or you can add some flags with the presets of what you want, and it will have the same effect. Now we're going to use the repository in this link here, which is the github.com/narwhal/nx examples, which is a full working NX monorepo, NX Workspace, which has two different apps and two different libraries, and it actually showcases all the cool features. So let's see this demo now. I think that's it. Yeah.
So, as promised, let's take a look at the NX examples repository, which showcases all of the features that we talked about before. You can find it at this address on GitHub, Narwhal/NX examples. So let's take a look what we have here. We have the NX examples folder, which has inside the apps folder, which has a cart application with its E3 test. On the cart application, we can see that it's a React application. It also
at an Angular conference
application, which, as we can see, is an Angular application. And it also has sub-libraries. It has the cart library, which has inside some parts of the cart application. And it has a products library, which again has some parts of the products application, which we'll see in action in the browser. And it also has a shared library. In the shared library, it has some shared UI components that are used by both of the applications, like the header, which we will see is written in JSX. And some other utility libraries that like the JSXify. And if we take a look, it also has a library for state management, which uses NGUPEx. And then it has some other UI elements. So let's take a look. What do we see when we run the application? To serve first the cart application, we can do nx serve cart. And it will just run our local server. And we can see the application running, the cart application running in 4200 port. We can see the header here. Now, let's take a look what happens when we run. When the server stops and we're able to run the products application. No, my server does not want to stop, so we will give it a minute. Okay. Let's see. When we serve the products application,
so you see, because the products application is an Angular application, it triggers
and we refresh here.
ng run the products. But because the other one was the React, it just uses the nx command.
Your products, and again, the same header. As we said, the products application, the carts application is a React application, and the products application is an Angular application. But the nx header that we saw, the shared header, is written in JSX, but it's exported, and we can see that we can import the same element like this in both our Angular application and the React application. And it's imported like this. Another interesting thing to see is that some of our applications, for example, all the applications that go in the cart, all the libraries that go in the carts application are written in React, just like our cart application. And the libraries the UI libraries that go in the products are usually written in Angular. But as we saw, we can have the shared libraries that are written, for example, in JSX. Now, let's take a look what happens. Let's wait for the server to stop. Okay. And let's take a look what happens when we run the dependency graph. So, yeah, usually it opens right. Okay, yeah. So the dependency graph for our application looks like this. Pretty more complete than the one we saw in the example application before, right? So we can see that the shared header, for example, which is used both by the products and cart, both the products and the cart application depend on the shared header. Again, The two tests, of course, depend on their applications, and we can see all the other dependencies that we have here. For example, the shared header is using the JSX file library, so it depends on this, and so does this UI library here. So in this nice way, we can see the whole dependence graph. We can choose to only see one application, or we can group by folder. Now, let's see. We talked about the affected command. Now, let's change something. Let's go ahead and change something in our header element. For example, let's change the background color from blue and make it red and save. Now, if we go and run NX affected depth graph, the depth graph will show us only these parts of our project were affected by our change. Our change was in shared header, and both the cards application and the products application depend on the shared header. But the three applications of cart and products depend on the cards and products are respectively. So if we were to rebuild, retest, or rerun, these parts of the code that were affected would have to do the same thing again, would have to retest or rebuild. So this dependency graph helps us understand a little bit better. If we show the whole cart, again, it will show us in red the parts that were affected, and we will have a general better understanding of how our whole code base is affected when we change some small thing.
So that was a demo. I think I can stop sharing. And we didn't talk about the affected command yet, because we will talk about the affected command in what's coming up next.
Okay.
So, Jeff, I think the screen is yours.
All right, I'm ready to share.
Yes.
There's one of my new goats, Thumper, along with my pig Cheddar. Let me get the keynote presentation. Okay, do you see the presentation now?
Yeah, give me a moment. Oh, where is it? Yes.
Okay. So we saw Katerina's demo, and you can see the source for that at github.com/narwhal/nx-examples. And you can see some more interesting things there too. So now let's switch to the second part of our presentation, which is how NX makes your builds super fast. Let me see. I've got some animations here. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So let's break down an example with a single application composed of many libraries to see how NX uses intelligent analysis of a code change and know what projects can be affected by that change. Pretty much what you saw in the demo, we will explain it now. Oh, sorry. So let's think of a customer service portal with these pages. We have the knowledge base, the chat, and the support tickets. So this is one app, but we can partition it into several libraries that compose the application. And each section of the app can have its own features, which can be separated into even more libraries. For example, the new ticket feature is a screen where tickets are created. And since those sections and features of the app will definitely share some components and utilities, we can extrapolate more libraries, such as a design system and some utilities for communicating with the backend. In a real application, there would be many more ways to partition and share functionality between libraries, but let's keep it simple.
Oops. So let's consider when let's consider the developer lifecycle when a developer wants to on your team wants to change the layout of the new ticket UI. So this is just one feature in the application. So they would make the code change inside of this library, and then they would open a pull request. Now, if your CI tooling doesn't understand what changed and what its impact would be, it'll naturally rebuild and retest everything. And as the project grows in scope and more libraries, the total CI time grows with it. I need to wait for my animations. Oh, don't show the animation yet. me go back here. Okay, so this is what this is a naive example of what your workspace would look like if you had 7 projects in your workspace. Basically, your CI time is going to be the amount of time each project takes to build. And we could say test and linting and is also built in each of these projects. But basically, this is how your CI time looks. Each project takes a certain amount of time. It'll usually run sequence, and then it'll be complete at some point in time. Just making up a number here, around just a little over 500 milliseconds, 500 minutes, whatever, 500 seconds. But NX is smart. Understands the relationships of your projects and what depends on other projects. And for the most part, it understands these relationships implicitly in what's called a project graph. So based on what projects are importing other projects, NX can figure this out for you without you having to tell it how anything relates to other projects. And so NX can use that knowledge to look at what projects were changed as part of the code change and determine what projects are directly or transitively affected by that change. So in this case, we touched the new ticket library, which is depended on by support tickets, which is depended on by the customer service application. So now our CI can be smart and say, I'll just rebuild what's affected. And Jenkins is happy. And then our affected build time becomes only a factor of the 3 projects that needed to be built, and we don't have to build those other 4 projects that we were building before. So if we compare that to the original build time, the naive build time, we see our time reduces pretty significantly. But if we add to that the ability to parallelize our project builds, we can see that now the total CI time just becomes a matter of whatever the longest parallel task is. So if we run all 3 builds in parallel, then the app build is the longest, and so our CI is only as long as that build takes. So when we compare that to the first 2 optimizations, or the naive and then the first optimization of the affected builds, we now see we can bring our CI time much lower, already seeing some big improvements without really doing much work.
So even though we're able to rebuild only 3 of these projects, those projects depend on unaffected projects. By default, each affected project will pull in the sources of its dependencies to build from scratch. But NX now supports the ability for libraries to be built independently, and consumers will consume the package library instead of sources. This allows what we call incremental building. Incremental building really becomes powerful when you can cache and reuse the package libraries. So if I build and test the new ticket library in CI, and the design system and validator libraries have already been built and cached in CI's local cache, the builder can just build the source code inside the new ticket library without having to rebuild the source code from validators and design systems. So let's take a look at this example of building times for the 3 parts of our project. If a dependency of the target has been built, the build doesn't need to be totally fresh. So each individual part can use the cache to save building time. If we put the affected and parallel functionalities in action, together with incremental cache.
Sorry, it's auto-playing. I forgot.
No worries, sorry. Maybe I speak too slow. I don't know.
Come on, Katerina, come on.
If we put the affected and parallel functionalities in action, together with incremental cache, our build time is practically reduced to a quarter of the initial. And let's take a look now. No! One more.
Let me just move the slide to that screen.
I'm not a native speaker. Bear with me. There are lots of sh and sync and different sounds of essence.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. It won't advance.
I want the next slide, please.
Okay.
The final difficult slide. Okay. So now let's take a look now from how we started and what we end up with. At each step, our build time is reduced, and eventually, with the use of affected, parallel, and incremental cache, our total CI time is as long as our parallel task. And yes, we can see the goat now. Sorry.
All right. Now let me. Oh, there we can see the code. Beautiful
Aw.
thumper. So what if CI and developer computers work together? See another hypothetical. You thought we were done with the hypothetical questions. But what if they could work together and have access to the cache that was generated on CI and on developer computers, but could also access the output of commands that had been run locally? Something looks like this. So if the developer had already run most of the commands that are run in CI, like if I built the app, he's still autoplaying. Well, that's where NX Cloud comes in. NX Cloud makes it where instead of just caching things locally, like we saw in the previous example, we can actually share the cache across machines. And that, in which case, we have more cache hits and more parts of our builds can be pulled from a remote cache instead of only taking advantage of what I've already done on my own computer. So CI environments can take advantage of what developers have already done. Other developers on your team can take advantage of the builds that you've already done. And they can do fresh checkouts that will build in a matter of seconds because of all the work that's already been done by other machines. So then we see how much it makes things better at the end when we add the NX Cloud Remote Cache. We can see that CI time can get really, really short. And in the best case, your CI time, if it's running builds that have already been built at that kind of version of the files and all the other parameters have already been built with those variables, then your CI time can be as quick as 2 seconds. If you take out npm install time or whatever you're doing for that. And the time of actually building, testing, linting can be a matter of seconds if the work's already been done. And that's actually what we see with our own builds. If you look at the NX repo, you can look at some of our PRs and click to see the build details, and you'll see some of those are actually built in a matter of seconds because they're repeating a lot of work that's already been done somewhere else.
Yeah,
so
it's actually, yeah, sorry.
No, please. I was covering your part.
Yeah, sorry. So actually, it's not uncommon to see 10x build performance improvements in CI plus improvements locally. But it's not one way and not just CI that benefits. Every developer, computer, and environment in your organization can benefit from being connected to the NX Cloud.
And there's more. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out which screen I'm looking at. So NX has lots of other great tools to make it pleasurable for developers to build with NX. So we've got NX Console, which is a Visual Studio Code plugin that allows you to run NX commands or Angular CLI commands through a visual interface or through commands that are integrated into the IDE, which I love because I can never remember the flags, like the flag names or the right, hyphenation of the command of the flags when I'm running things. So I don't have to remember. I can just use the UI here. I can put things in a form and then watch the dry run, make sure it's the right thing, and then run it. We also have integrations with GitHub through NX Cloud. And the whole NX core is extensible with plugins. Actually, everything in NX is a plugin, except for the tools like Dependency Graph, which are built into the core. But the Angular support, React support, Storybook, all these things are built as NX plugins using the plugin API that anyone else can use to build their own NX plugins. And we actually have a growing community of plugins, of folks who are writing plugins to support things that we don't support natively. But we do have first-class support for React, where we support many React plugins, including React, Gatsby, Next.js, and soon React Native, which will be launching soon. And we also support Node and Angular and Nest.js, several things that we support ourselves, but there are also lots of high-quality community plugins to go with it. And that's our talk. Thank you for your time.